this meeting of the Welfare Reform Subcommittee. Can I first ask members to appoint a chairman for the meeting?
Okay, folks, welcome to the meeting of the Welfare Reform Subcommittee of the 11th of September. A reminder that the meeting will be recorded and that the recording will be subsequently available for public listening. Do we have any apologies?
Thank you, Chairman. We have apologies this morning from Councillor Carruthers, Councillor McGregor and Councillor Maitland.
Okay, can we move on to item number 2? Do you have any declarations of interest? No. Okay. Okay, can we turn then to item 4, the minute of the meeting of the 13th of March? Are members happy that that's a true record of the meeting? Yeah. Okay. And the meeting of the 15th of May? Okay, thanks very much. Okay, can we move on to item number 6? We've been asked to receive a presentation from Donald Thompson, the Credit Union Regional Development Worker for Dumfries and Galloway Housing Partnership. Assuming everyone's happy to receive the presentation? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, to everybody, thank you for inviting me along to speak with you this morning. My name's Donald Thompson, in case I forget, it's up on the screen. And I'm going to speak to you this morning about credit unions in Dumfries and Galloway and the development work that I've been involved with it so far. Just by way of introduction, my immediate past employment was with DGHP, so I'm currently on a secondment from that organisation. I wear 2 hats. First job title is Regional Development Officer for Credit Unions in Dumfries and Galloway, and the second is Solway Credit Union Project Worker. So sometimes I feel like I need a zip down the middle, but most of the time I keep both plates juggling. The position is, of course, as you'll know, funded by 3 partners, the Dumfries and Galloway Council, Loreburn Housing and DGHP. The secondment was initially for a 6-month period, and I'm very pleased that it was extended to a further 12 months, which now takes us through to the end of April next year. So I would like to say thank you for your continued support. It's much appreciated. At the 6-month point, I really felt as though I'd only just scratched the surface of the work that needs to be done with credit unions. So it's really good news that we have continued funding. And not surprisingly, the main purpose of my job role is to grow credit unions in Dumfries and Galloway. Just to put things into a bit of perspective for you, the credit union scene in Scotland looks like this. There are 107 credit unions currently in Scotland, with 343,000 members, and they're growing at a tremendous rate, 400 new members per week, 43% growth in membership since 2007, and 44,000 junior savers. It's very important to the strategy of credit unions that children grow up with credit unions in the household, that they learn to be savers, and then if and when they're looking for credit in the future, they've got the connection with the credit union. I put these numbers up, I don't expect you to memorise them, but £388 million in assets, 376 million in savings, £255 million out on loan, and a collective pre-tax profit of 8.8 million. I only put those up to show you that credit unions in Scotland are not a Mickey Mouse outfit. They're real, they're genuine, they're growing fast, and they've often been referred to as the poor man's bank. Well, if I was a poor man with 376 million in my bank account, I'd be perfectly happy. Penetration rates. By that I mean the percentage of people or population who use a credit union in a specific area. Around the world, there are 200 million members in over 100 different countries. In Ireland, a massive 73% of the population work with a credit union. They've got representation on every second street corner. It's a very, very strong movement in Ireland. In the States, 45% of people work with a credit union. So almost every second person you meet is involved with a credit union in the States. In Glasgow, 24% of the population, nearly 1 in 4, work with a credit union. And there are 34 credit unions represented in Glasgow and the surrounding area. So it's known as the credit union capital of the UK. In the UK, it comes down to 15% penetration. Scotland a bit lower still, 6.4%. And I think you can probably guess what area statistic I'm going to put up next. In Dumfries and Galloway, we have less than 1% penetration. So plenty for me to be going at. Looking at the Dumfries and Galloway scenario, the credit unions that are represented here. First of all, we have Solway Credit Union, who were set up in 1999. They're based in Dumfries, approximately 426 members currently. And their common bond says that they can work with people who live or work within Nithsdale, Annandale, Nestdale, or Stewartry. Stranraer Credit Union, through in the west, set up much about the same time, based in Stranraer, not surprisingly, similar size to Solway, and their common bond says that they can accommodate members who live in Wigtonshire. Also entering Dumfries and Galloway through their common bond and their link with Irvine Housing Association, First Alliance Ayrshire, who are based in Kilwinning, much bigger operation, 10 times the size of the two local credit unions, but they're allowed to come into Dumfries and Galloway because they have a partnership with Irvine Housing Association, who, as I'm sure you know, manage 400 houses in the Stakeford estate in Dumfries. Also in their common bond, Sovereign Credit Union, who are based in Cumnock, the common bond states that they can operate in Dumfries and Galloway. They have approximately 800 members, although they're not currently active in Dumfries and Galloway. So why should we look at growing credit unions in Dumfries and Galloway? Well, they're just about everything that's good, really. They're run by the members, for the members, they're cooperative, they're not for profit, they're ethical banking, they're encouraging thrift, the careful use of money. It's a great word, thrift, I like using that one. They're getting people into the savings habit, and they're a source of sensibly priced loans as required. We should grow them too because they can help with tenancy sustainment with the coming of universal credit, which I'm sure you know all too keenly about. People's benefits in the future are going to be paid monthly as a lump sum in arrears to a bank account. Not everybody can have a bank account. It's going to upset many people's budgeting. And we do have plans to produce a budget account, which will help people through these difficult circumstances. And also to help the people who are financially excluded, who can't actually have a bank account for whatever reason. And an amazing 4% of people in Dumfries and Galloway are currently unbanked. Also, we need to grow them to save people from, without naming any names, the online and payday and doorstep lenders. A loan from a credit union would cost you 12% per annum. From other less scrupulous lenders, it could be 5,000% APR. It has to be said that they're not the answer for everybody in terms of borrowing, because currently the lending policy states that you need to have been a saver for 13 weeks. So we can't provide an immediate fix for many people who present and say, I need to borrow some money. So they do need to have a relationship at the moment as being a saver for 13 weeks, and then they can potentially borrow up to 3 times what they've saved. It's fair also to say that we are reviewing lending policy, to look at alternatives and with a view to helping people more quickly than that. So what have I been up to? The first exercise which I carried out was a scoping exercise, and the purpose of that was to assess the current capacity of each of the credit unions I mentioned earlier. And that allowed me to establish what was required in terms of resources and assistance and promotion for them to grow. It allowed me also to help formulate a strategy for best covering the entire region. And it's fair to say that each of the credit unions all expressed a desire to grow. They all wanted to become bigger. But both local credit unions, and by that I mean Solway and Stranraer, were lacking in admin capacity. And that really needs to be tackled before any meaningful growth or marketing could happen. If I explain to you that Solway Credit Union has one part-time administrator for 16 hours a week, that gives you an idea of the current situation and why that needs to grow before we can start pouring more business in the top. And more news on that shortly. The scoping also revealed a need to look at premises, product range, lending policy, marketing, funding, and volunteer support. So again, plenty of activity for me to be getting on with. One of the biggest tasks which I've undertaken so far was the submitting of a funding bid to try and resolve the admin capacity and bring the credit unions up to scratch. So I submitted a funding bid at the beginning of May to the Enterprise Ready Fund, which is ultimately Scottish Government money, which is administered by Foundation Scotland. And if that's successful, then that would provide PCs, printers, staff, admin staff, short-term marketing posts. It would allow us to upgrade the website and mobile facilities and really bring Solway to the people. I think it's important to, particularly with the geographic area that we need to cover, to have the online and telephone banking, and also to appeal to the younger audience as well. Because of the scale of this task, this funding bid, it was very time consuming. I could only look at it for one credit union. So I chose Solway, being the one which would receive the financial support better because they work a different model to Stranraer, who work on a volunteer basis as opposed to recruited staff. And with that time constraint and the population that would be covered, it was chosen to work with Solway on that. I am grateful to Heather Marshall of Third Sector Dumfries and Galloway, who helped me significantly with that funding bid, and her input mustn't go underestimated. So whilst that was going on, I couldn't sit in my thumbs and do nothing. So just to give you an idea of the other activities that I've been getting on with, I've written 5 articles for various newspapers and tenant newsletters in Stranraer Press and Standard and the 2 social housing landlord newsletters. I've attended 6 open days with display boards, standing peddling my wares at tenant conferences, and most recently at the Barney College, the Freshers Open Day, to reach out to the younger people. I totted up and I've given a total of 20 presentations to interested groups. Now that has ranged from people who are living in temporary accommodation and homeless, to board of directors, to a complete broad spectrum. I've spoken with political party groups, I've spoken with the trade union groups, and probably one of the sort of furthest reaching series of presentations with 6 which I did in conjunction with the Scottish Illegal Money Lending Unit and the Fiat team, one of their money advisors. So it was a series of 6 presentations across Dumfries and Galloway, and we were speaking about the perils of illegal money lenders, what help is out there in terms of the Fiat and their money advice team, and also looking at the alternatives that a credit union can provide for people borrowing. I set up and I'm now running Facebook and Twitter accounts, so we're trying to get current and relevant with people who use all these social media. I'm not very good at it yet, but I'm going to a training course this afternoon to learn how to do it properly. So watch this space. We've written a new business plan for Solway, so they now have a current and meaningful structured business plan to take them forward. And again, I had help from Heather Marshall at the third sector in that one. I've secured more office space in the hub for Solway Credit Union. I have provided day-to-day holiday and sickness cover. I've rolled my sleeves up and actually got on with the hard work. I've dealt with the regulator in helping to resolve some minor compliance issues. I've assisted with training of staff and directors. I've built business contacts because whilst I couldn't actually be bringing in shed loads of business, I thought it was important to get out and at least introduce myself to people, make the connection, and when we are ready and when we have got the funding and the admin capacity, that the development work can really take off. I've also submitted 4 more funding applications and confirmed further financial support from my project board, just in case, because my Enterprise Ready Fund bid wasn't going to fail, was it? And then, newsflash. 31st of July, I received an email from the Enterprise Ready which said, sorry, we're not going to support your bid. There was no explanation, there was no feedback, that was bad news. However, 3 weeks later, after having me dangling on the end of a piece of string, I got a phone call to say, yes, we would actually like to support your project. And on the 3rd of September, received a written offer of grant. So the monies I'd applied for in May have now finally been agreed. We've got the wherewithal to move forward with the development of growing Solway Credit Union. So I'm now able to press ahead and get on with recruitment of the admin staff. That's going on as we speak. I can get my hands on the computer software and hardware that we need. The website will be updated so people can do things online and using mobile banking, telephones, etc. And we will have a marketing resource in place shortly to be able to tell everybody about it. So what about the future? What does that hold? Credit unions need to grow, and by that I mean they need to establish more members. And one of the best ways to do that is to work with salary deduction schemes, payroll deduction schemes with local employers. And I already have an agreement at director level with DGHP for them to take part in a salary deduction scheme. Lower-bound housing will follow, and when appropriate, we'll roll this out to the council and NHS as well. But clearly, we've got to walk before we run. I don't want to break the machine that I'm just building with the admin capacity, so I need to spread it out and not pour in too much business straight away. There's plans to expand the school savings schemes as part of their financial education. We're involved with the schools already, and I've spoken about the importance of reaching the young people and helping them to get the savings habit and to grow up with credit unions in their household. And as the credit unions expand and strengthen, we'll hope to have partnerships with the DWP and the CAB who will establish referrals. They'll refer people over for assistance and membership from the credit union. And also, as mentioned earlier, with the coming of universal credit, we'll be working with the social landlords to ensure that their tenants don't remain unbanked and that budget accounts are promoted, particularly at tenancy sign-up. Coming soon, this is just to give you a flavour of the product that we're looking at in terms of being able to help people in budget with the coming of universal credit. It's called a prepaid card model, and broadly it starts on the left-hand side where somebody's benefit will be paid into the credit union master account. We'll have met with them, we'll have agreed basic payments such as rent and council tax, which will be ring-fenced and sent away by the credit union to the landlord and the council. And the balance of the benefit, there are various options, but the preferred one is to send it to the prepaid card. Prepaid card is a Visa debit card. It's like a pay-as-you-go phone. You can only spend what you have on it, the credit that's on it. It can be used to draw cash at an ATM. It can be used at a point of sale, and you can get cash back on it. So it will help people to budget. They'll know what money they've got to work with. They'll know that their rent is paid and they've got a roof over their head. So that's coming soon. One of the slight delays in that is that the legislation doesn't yet, but it will allow universal credit to be paid direct into a credit union master account. It can go to individuals' accounts, but it can't at this moment go to a credit union master account. But that will change. We're assured of that. So that's coming soon. So just to wind up, I'm continuing to work with Stranraer and looking at further options to support their growth. It has taken slightly longer than was anticipated or hoped, but now that we've got over the funding issues, we're all set to go. And the expansion plans can really come to life. It's a very exciting time for me. I love shopping. And the development can start for real, so watch this space. In the meantime, I don't believe I have a monopoly on good ideas for growing credit unions in Dumfries and Galloway, so from anyone in the room or anywhere, I would welcome any suggestions that you have, any ideas for growth. If you have any invitations for me to come and speak at any interested groups, I'll be more than happy to do so, or even offers of volunteering work. We're trying to grow the board, the expansion of business, particularly in Solway and in Stranraer too. They're always looking to recruit new board members. Thank you for listening, everybody. That's my contact details up on the screen. And I'd like to offer any questions that you might have.
Thanks very much indeed, Donald. That was incredibly helpful. Can I open it up to members for questions? Alistair.
Thanks, Colin. Perhaps maybe more a suggestion to begin with than a question. I mean, it was very helpful indeed. And I think that, you know, if you'd be prepared to share your slide presentation, I think we should send it to all 47 members of the council. That, you know, I think that would be a big help. But, you know, the question, thanks, Chair, was, did I understand you correctly when you said that, you know, you chose to work, and I'm not being parochial, it's unlike me, I know, to work with Solway in the first instance because primarily they were, you know, they were based on volunteers rather than Stranraer being based on employees. Was
the other way around.
Sorry, it's the other way around.
Yeah,
Stranraer was employees.
Stranraer are based completely on a voluntary basis. They're a neat little package. They have their own premises all branded up. You've maybe seen it in passing. And they have their band of volunteers, and it works very well. I'm mindful of the potential pitfalls of mixing paid staff with volunteer staff. So that's why I've got to look at other alternatives about how we're going to work with Stranraer. And I have some thoughts, but they're not for publicity yet. But I'm not forgetting about my friends in Stranraer.
Thanks, Chair. That's reassuring.
Thanks, Colin. I certainly take on board the sentiment Alistair expresses regarding the 47 members, but I think it would be more appropriate for area committees where there'd be specific issues across the region that would come more to the fore, would be of greater help than a 47 member meeting only. I think I have particular questions, for example, regarding the stewardship. And I think in a stewardship context, the stewardship area committee would be appreciative of not only a presentation, but that opportunity to look at the local context. Thank you.
Yes, the only thing I would add to that is that I'm in discussions reaching into stewardship with an outlet in Dalbeattie with a view to expanding the presence and at least providing an information point in Dalbeattie for people to work with the credit union. But yes, it needs to spread as wide as possible. And that's part of the reason for looking at the online as well. There's no particular substitute for the face-to-face interaction, but by bringing the online and digital as far as we can, that's, I think, another way of reaching out into from the centre.
Thanks, Chair. Just to take up Councillor Collins' suggestion, we'll certainly speak to the area framework staff and organise for Donald to attend future area committees, make those presentations to members at that level.
What I would say, Chair, is that there's no reason, as far as I'm concerned, why the two need to be mutually exclusive. I mean, what I was thinking of, as I say, in a short order would be this, sort of, to be sent to all 47 members, if I think it's a first-rate suggestion. We'll follow that up, as it were, with the likes of, presentations to area committees. Because when you go back, Chair, to the statistics, I mean, we've less than 1% in Dumfries and Galloway. It's just over 6% in Scotland as a whole. But when you look at the incredible statistic pertaining to Ireland, 73%, that to me is the sort of target that we should ultimately, in a national context, be looking at replicating. There are good non-onerous causes, why that should be the case and why that should be so. And I think we've really got to work hard to develop that. And as I say, I think in the first instance, you've also, for instance, my own ward, you have a federation of mid-Galloway community councils. Perhaps that would be a potential protocol as well, Chair. That I realise you're only the one person and we can't clone you. But as I say, I think that, for those of us that are committed to the concept, and I'm sure we all are here today, it would be good, as it were, to work with you as positively as possible, Chair, and really, get as much publicity out there and sort of trying to get proper coverage of the region as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I appreciate your comments. And just to add to that, recently I did attend an open day which DGHP was running with one of my display board events on behalf of Stranraer Credit Union in Whithorn. And there was significant interest expressed by the Community Council there. And I have the contacts to make, and I'm trying to marry up the two. So yes, that's well meant and well said, and is being actioned.
Ronnie?
There's two obvious questions. What happens after April? You've clearly got a plan, and 1% of the people in Dumfries and Galloway are in a credit union. What's your target? How between now and April to increase that?
Yeah, it would be very nice to get to the Irish stage, but they've got 70, 80 years head start on us in terms of developing credit unions. Glasgow have had probably a 10-year head start on us. The support that the council, I think they put in about £8 million over a 10-year period in Glasgow. After April, in terms of my position, I think John's probably in a better place to answer that. My aspiration would be to get to the Scottish average of the 6%, because that's still mass let me down. What's that? 4,500 of the population of Dumfries and Galloway. So if we could get to that level of membership over 5-year period to get to that sort of level. Critical mass for Solway Credit Union is 2,000 members. And I've made a plan to have 1,000 over the next 2 years. If that goes some way to answering your question.
Thanks, Chair. In terms of Councillor Ogilvy's other question about what happens post-April, I sit on the project board along with colleagues from DGHP and Lawburn. Lorna Campbell's a member of that board as well. And that's one of the key things that we'll be looking at in terms of sustaining the good work that Donald's done. And we'll be bringing reports back to this subcommittee in terms of any ideas we have for making sure that the momentum increases and we sustain the original development work. There's clearly an ongoing piece of work to do. How, as partners, we deliver that, I think we're still looking at it, but we'll certainly bring forward options for members to consider before the April deadline so we can make sure that there's continuity and the momentum's not lost over the last 18 months.
Thanks very much, Chair. Can I say, and I stress in the Wigtonshire context, I mean, the Wigton Area Committee is extremely supportive of the concept of credit unions and would dearly like to see credit union activity expanded. It's primarily been a Stranraer credit union, though it now has expanded into Mid-Galloway, but I think there is a lot of potential. You mentioned Whithorn, for instance. I think there's a lot of potential there, for further expansion. And I would like to, obviously, Chair, while we can't make any sort of commitments here today, I would like to think that in terms of, the Wigton Area Committee, you would certainly be pushing in an open door, as it were, sort of with tangible proposals being brought forward, as it were. And bear in mind as well, Chair, that that's a forum which can provide reasonable financial support in a Wigtonshire context for the likes of these.
Sounds like a commitment there from the Area Committee. Ronnie?
It strikes me, you mentioned about the area committees and Alistair and getting presentations. I just wonder what role CLD has in that, because they're interfacing with a lot of the more disadvantaged people, right across the piece. So CLD could be a mechanism to, promote credit unions. I don't know if you've done that or if it's within the council thought process.
Thanks, Chair. Certainly, the financial inclusion strategy working group that really drives a lot of the wider policy work has got representation from CLD. Jamie Ferguson is a member of that group, and I believe that there's been discussions and contact, certainly discussions at that level in terms of making sure that the work that CLD do ties in not only with the credit union work, but with the wider work around the whole financial inclusion agenda.
Can I ask a couple of questions, Don? I was interested, there's a couple of things up that you mentioned that credit unions were growing in around 400 new members per week. Is that something has that been a long-term trend, or is that something that's related to the whole welfare reform agenda? Has there been a significant increase in the number of people joining credit unions? I'm also interested in I noticed there was 44,000 junior savers, which was quite a surprise, and I'm just wondering, when you mentioned in the presentation about expanding school saving schemes, what that would actually involve. I think that sounds like a very positive initiative. And just generally, we do have a low base in Dumfries and Galloway. Why do we have such a low base?
Thank you. The growth has been achieved over the last 7 years, but I think if you looked at the curve, it would be significantly upwards in recent times. And a large part of that is coming on the back of welfare reforms. And indeed, the Scottish Government had two initiatives either side of Christmas. They had press and radio campaigns which were going out to promote credit unions, to help people deal with their finances. So, there's no doubt that there is significant backing to the growth of credit unions, and that has come more so recently. In terms of the schools, that's 44,000 nationally in Scotland, but I think there's also a model which Glasgow has worked towards, and that's to encourage young savers by giving them a financial incentive. You may be familiar with the fact that they've put out, I just can't recall the name of it, but it's effectively £10 to each secondary age school child into a credit union account to encourage the growth of their connections with credit unions. So it's about financial support, and that's what's seen the growth most recently.
Budget leader probably regret maybe asking that question. But the Glasgow initiative is a really interesting one. They've obviously set up these particular accounts. But apart from that example,
I haven't spoken to the local authorities specifically, but I have forged connections with the Ayrshire Credit Union First Alliance, and they have a successful model, and I'm watching and learning from their activities. It's something that I can take forward to speak to other local authorities, but it's not something that I've done as yet.
The fact that we've got 0.57% in Dumfries and Galloway compared to 1 in 4 in Glasgow, why such a low base in this region? Is it historic or capacity or?
Yes and yes. It's credit unions seem to have been a very well kept secret in Dumfries and Galloway. We do have the challenges of being spread across 2,500 square miles and only having representation at either end of it. So it's not without its challenges in terms of covering the geographic area, but it does need resources. They do need resources put into them to be able to have somebody who there, or more than one person, who can be actually physically, actively developing the credit unions. And hitherto, that's not been there. You know, it's more and more difficult. Stranar's model is all based on volunteers, and you know, people's ever-increasing demands in their time. It's a big ask to get volunteers to go out and grow the credit union. They've got to be extremely enthusiastic and have lots of time to do it. And that's in part, I think, why Solway decided to go down the paid route, you know, and why my position was established, so that there can be significant input to development now.
Thanks, Chair. I think as well, though, on the back of what you've said about other local authorities, etc., and your response, Donald, that, you know, I don't think we should necessarily, you know, shy away from sort of working with existing credit unions. You know, having been born and brought up in New Cumnock, I was particularly interested to see your reference, you know, to a credit union with 800 members in Cumnock. Now, some of us would argue that, you know, Upper Nithsdale, for instance, has always tended to lie in more to East Ayrshire, to that immediately adjoining part of East Ayrshire, than maybe it does further down the Nith Valley. And I know I may be treading in somewhat dangerous ground in saying that, but I think that's always been a perception, and it may indeed be reality. And I mean, I would have thought that perhaps if you've got problems, the likes of sort of trying to put in more structures up there, it might be not necessarily any bad thing, you know, to sort of piggyback on the existing credit union if they'd be prepared, as it were, to expand, or allow their activities to be expanded. My attitude is really that I'm no precious about which credit union a member, you know, a person belongs to, as long as they've got that facility and can make use of it as and when they require it. That's the important thing, and it might be something of a patchwork quilt to an extent, but as long as we get the area covered and that people who really need and want to be there get the opportunity to do so, that to me is the
yeah. But I quite agree, you know, and just to add to that, there's a further initiative which the SAOS, the Scottish Agricultural Organisation Society, currently undergoing predominantly the work with farmers, but they've got a feasibility study going on at the moment to form a rural credit union, Scottish Rural Credit Union. And I've made contact with them, and you know, we've been exchanging information because they're working to the Scottish Government definition of a rural area being 3,000 in population or less. But they're looking to potentially, well, it's not a finished product yet, but they're looking at the feasibility of having a rural credit union, which would inevitably come into our region and may help to resolve the stewardship scenario. So that, you know, there's other activities going on in the background as well, which could help towards that.
Thanks, Chair. I don't want to prolong this extremely interesting, you know, presentation and discussion, but, you know, can I ask through you, Sir Donald, that, you know, have you come across any sort of the issue of stigmatisation, and if so, how do you address that and how do you overcome it? I would hope, in fact, the answer to the first question would be no, but, you know, I sometimes wonder.
I referred previously to the Poor Man's Bank, and one slight stigma that I've come across, particularly when talking on a face-to-face basis with people with my display boards, is the name, credit union. And people who don't know much about them, and it's my job to educate, say, oh, I don't want to borrow, I don't need any of that. So that's one sort of negative response that you do get. Credit unions need to have a balance of borrowers and savers to exist. We need the borrowers to borrow so we've got money to switch the lights on and run the business. But I've had other approaches from people. A chap came in to see us in Solway and said, I want to pay in £1,000. I explained what was going on. He said, look, I don't really need too much information about this. I've just retired. This is an ethical investment. It's supporting my community, and I want to put this money in because I know it's a good thing. So, you know, there's two sort of sides to it. And I think the plans to work with employers and get into the payroll deduction side of things will encourage the thrift, the savings habit, and people will just become better educated about credit unions. And that's my job role. to get out there and educate people that it's not a poor man's bank.
Thanks. We've spoken at length, and it's been very helpful in terms of establishing a credit union. I wonder, do you have a blueprint, a model that you could roll out, as it were, to an existing initiative that may wish to incorporate a credit bank facility within their already running organisations, and how they might align themselves quite easily and simply to accommodate that model?
The short answer is no. I don't have a blueprint to say this is how you would set up a credit union. My job role is, I see it, is to grow the 2 local credit unions. And it would be to set up a credit union from scratch is quite a major undertaking. I've had discussions and conversations with a group in Edinburgh who are looking to set up the Water of Leith Credit Union. And that's a 2-year project. You know, they're gathering information, they're looking at feasibility. The Scottish Rural Credit Union, they are taking a 30-month period to look at feasibility as to what model is going to fit. There are 2 credit unions which are based locally, and would be very welcoming and open to looking at organisations or communities who want to expand a credit union. I think there's no particular need to look further than using the local credit unions, because they're based, they're all registered and set up with the regulator, and dealing with the regulator is a huge part of our time and daily activities. So starting from scratch is a very big ask. I don't have a blueprint for doing it, but why not deal with the local ones?
Sorry, my thinking here is that I'm aware of a number of initiatives, very active and successful initiatives across the region. And again, I'm going down to the local level and my earlier reference to area committees, who already have structures in place and who are already successful in pursuing their current aims to incorporate credit union facility within their operation. One, I would suggest, would address to some extent possibly any stigma that may be attached, but the other would be to grow the interest in that local initiative to its advantage, as well as broadening the provision to the wider society or community that they serve. So to have something to hand that they could adapt, albeit maybe connected in turn to a parent organisation or some such. But I certainly, from a stewardship point of view, do not identify with any credit union, and I would suggest that insofar as the Stewardship Area Committee is concerned, that would be the overwhelming response that would come from there, whilst at the same time recognising that we have a considerable number of very successful, very ambitious and very able initiatives operating across the stewardship. And I see this as something that could complement what they're doing and complement the credit union organisation.
Thank you for that, Brian. I agree with you. And if you can open any doors for me, please pass me on contacts. I'd be delighted to meet with them and explain what we can offer.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you very much, Donald. That was incredibly informative. I think it would be helpful to in the first instance circulate the presentation to all 47 members, if you'd be happy with that to happen. Donald, obviously, John's given a commitment to then liaise with area framework management teams about possible presentations at area committees, which I think would be incredibly helpful as well. And I think it'd be fair to say that as a committee and certainly as a council, we're very supportive of the work in expanding credit unions, and it would be good to get an update as soon as in the future to hear more about the work. But that's been very helpful, Donald. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, members, can we turn to item number 7, which is a report on the Welfare Reform Mitigation Fund and a number of proposals there for us to consider. Can I ask John if he wants to say anything about the report?
Thanks, Chair. The detail of the report is before members. We've got 3 bids for members to consider that are summarised at the table at 3.2. Just to remind members, the Welfare Reform Mitigation Fund was agreed to be established at the May Welfare Reform Subcommittee using some of the balances of the discretionary housing payment fund that was received by the Scottish Government, confirmed that that was appropriate to use for wider issues around the welfare reform agenda, and we agreed to run a rolling programme of bids. So we've got 3 bids in front of members: the Anti-Poverty Strategy Research Commission, Solway Credit Union Treasurer Support Officer, and an additional Financial Education Officer for the FIA team. We've currently got balances of 165,000, and clearly we can confirm that the funding's in place if members are minded to agree all or any of the bids. The details of the bids are attached at the appendix, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, John. I think very helpful, and I think good bids. Obviously, all members here, I think, actually sit in policy and resources, so we obviously requested that the first one around commissioning research as part of the anti-poverty strategy. I think Donald's given a very good sales pitch for additional capacity within credit unions this morning, and obviously I think all members are very supportive of the whole concept of financial education and pushing that. In fact, that's a key part of our whole inclusion strategy. So can I ask if members have got any views on these? Happy to agree them, or any questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, that's agreed. We'll look at the recommendations 2.1 to note them, and 2.2 to agree the 3 bids. Yeah. Okay, thanks very much. Okay, can we turn now to item number 8 on the agenda, which is the regular update we receive around the Welfare Reform Fund and also the payment of discretionary housing benefit. Can I ask John and Lorna if there's anything they wish to add to the report?
Thank you, Chair. No, I've got the details of the report as there, so I've nothing further to add, but happy to take questions.
Can I open it up to members? Any questions? Ronnie?
Just, this is the bedroom tax, or this is the discretionary house payment? This was to cover the bedroom tax, wasn't it? Sorry, the extra room supplement.
That's certainly one aspect of it, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
The question I was going to ask, Chair, was now it's been about a year or so, and all the single houses, all the physical moves that people could make have been done by the housing association. So what's the trend looking like now that all that shuffling around, if it happened?
Thanks, Chair. When the initial charge came in, the bedroom tax, as it's referred to, came in, and there was insufficient discretionary housing payment to cover the shortfall, there was obviously an exercise undertaken by the RSLs to identify whether those affected households would be able and willing to move. The amount of movement was limited. I think there was a previous report or presentation to this subcommittee last year, and from memory it was something around 15 to 20 people moved specifically because of the bedroom tax imposition. Subsequently to that, we got the additional discretionary housing payment fund, which allowed the council to take a more proactive approach and effectively underwrite the bedroom tax for every affected household, subject to them going through the proper process of applying. And that continues to be the situation. We've got funding in place to cover up to 14 and 15, and we're confident it'll carry on into 16 as well. So that pressure to move essentially has been taken away in the short term. There will still be people thinking, well, I'll move anyway, but the impact in terms of the housing stock, I'd have to say, has been very limited because of the additional resources we've been able to bring to the table. Lorna might want to add something in terms of the specific DHP payment.
And I agree with what John said there. I mean, because we've been able to meet the shortfall for people who were impacted by bedroom tax, there's not, from a housing benefit angle, and certainly, you know, sustaining the rent payments we were paying full benefit, the pressure's no longer there for them actually to move. So I'm not seeing, you know, a lot of change of addresses for people who were impacted by size criteria. And also because our current policy was also for DHP, because of the amount we had, we're to a certain degree protecting private sector tenancies as well that have extra rooms because there is a specific need for that room. You know, that protection has been extended into the private sector. So again, that pressure to move has been removed for foreseeable future.
Alistair?
Thanks very much, Chair. Two points, sir. Paragraph 3.4 on Appendix 2 is the first one. It's, you know, it shows the danger, of course, of just, you know, looking at statistical tables and statistical information without sort of the underlying reasons for that. I think it's reassuring that we've got the reasons for it. And my own view, for the record, Chair, is that, you know, we shouldn't have a vetting system. You know, at the end of the day, we should allow, as it were, people, you know, to make applications, to determine these applications, rather than sort of trying to siphon them off. That's the first one, sir. Second one, 3.4, on the last part of the paragraph, Chair, we're talking about as applications are predominantly from vulnerable people in difficult circumstances, there can be a high likelihood of the full information not being completed at the application stage. And, you know, I accept entirely sort of the validity of that, but is there any way that we can address that particular problem or that particular difficulty, Chair?
Just on that, before come in, Lorna, we're absolutely confident that when I was looking at the Scottish Government performance figures recently, we're absolutely confident that it is the fact we don't have a vetting system, that's the only main explanation as to why our sort of figures are at 41% compared to, I think, other local authorities a lot higher than that. Do they all, the ones that are higher than us, do they all have a vetting system, or is there any other explanation for that relatively low figure?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, it's been an area of concern for us as well. We couldn't understand why our acceptance level was so much lower than everybody else. And we're part of a user group, a Scottish-wide user group for Scottish Welfare Fund, which our officers attend on a regular basis. I can't say 100% that every one of these authorities that have a higher acceptance level have a vetting system, but the feedback I'm getting from the user groups is a high percentage do have a vetting system, or they do have officers who will, meet applicants on a face-to-face basis. First of all, decide before an application is taken whether somebody's actually eligible for the scheme or whether they'll qualify, so the application's never made, and that's not recorded in the figures. We are continuing that ongoing discussion. All I can say is for this year, I know from the user groups we've attended so far, we are one of the, and I think there's only us and one other local authority that have maintained their priority level at a medium, where a lot of the authorities, the majority of the authorities have now taken their priority levels back to high because their funds are not going to, or there's a perception from each local authority that their funds won't last a year. So, our spending and what I'm seeing in our trend of our spending this year, it is higher than it was last year. So I'm confident that, we are interpreting the regulations correctly and we're not out of step with the other local authorities, and that our decision making is not, on or par for the applications that we do review. Got the second part of the question, sorry, Alistair.
With your leave, Chair, it was paragraph 3.4. It says that as applications are predominantly from vulnerable people in difficult circumstances, there can be a high likelihood of the full information not being completed at the application stage. And my question, Chair, was, is there any way that we can address that and overcome it, please?
Apologies, yeah. Yes, we're working very close because some of the applications are often supported applications with either third sector or, social work or, homeless. So we are working with the other departments to ensure where there are assisted applications, that they do get the information we actually need to process, as well as educating actual applicants themselves, that, when we process or when they're filling in a form, they do give as much information as possible. I mean, our forms are quite lengthy as it is. So it's trying to strike the balance of not being it over cumbersome for people to actually dissuade them from applying in the first place by making it too cumbersome, but getting enough information out there and enough training and support that actually people do make applications but with the right information.
Okay, members have any other questions? Ronnie?
Chair. It refers to the last recommendation, 2.3, and it's at 3.6 about increasing the capacity of employing somebody else. If you read it, and especially the last paragraph, it suggests that it's a spend to save. You know, you get somebody in and it cuts down some of the repeat and speculative claims. So I'm reading between the lines, it's sort of spend to save. We employ someone to, and that might cut back the burden of extra administration. That's the way I read it anyway.
It may be, I think, talking to other local authorities who have officers who actually visit, where you get speculative claims or claims that come in and you find that actually the person doesn't need that or they're not in a situation, there may be actually underlying reasons why someone has made an application for something that, you know, they're not entitled to, that you then find you have to address through a different way, and it may be they're entitled to funding, but through a different stream. What I'm hoping certainly is that if people are aware that we will come out and visit and look at claims, that may deter some speculative claims, but also we're looking to maximise the scheme as well, in that, you know, we may find once we go and visit and sit down with somebody, you may find actually there's more of a need there and a bigger need, so we may find in some cases we'll actually spend more because someone hasn't put in their full situation, either embarrassment or, you know, or not knowing the full, you know, range of the scheme. So it's one I think we will monitor very closely as to what the impact of these officers actually are and how we measure, you know, what impact it has on the actual application and spend, as well as, you know, what it costs us to employ them and what they undertake. I mean, obviously it's coming at the same time as well as, you know, our moving to goods and procurement. So they're going to run, you know, along. So we'll have to measure what the impact of actually going down the procurement route rather than the cash route. We expect that to reduce the expenditure.
Alistair?
Thanks, Chair. I think, you know, for want of a better term, a priori, you know, the appointment of these money advice and welfare support officers is the right thing to do. But, you know, when you read the middle part, Chair, of paragraph 3.6, it spells out, you know, the pragmatic reasons as to why as well. It's a good idea, and I have no compunctions whatsoever with agreeing that particular recommendation when it comes to it, Chair.
Okay, any other members? Can I just ask, Lorna, do we know how our successful appeal figures compare to other local authorities? I say it's about a third of the appeal cases are effectively overturned, if you like. And I see also in the report that you're implying that the main reason is obviously additional information coming forward. Is there any other reasons? But how do those figures compare to other local authorities? Do we know?
I think compared to other local authorities, I'd have to double check the last lot of information, but we're pretty much on a par with other local authorities. I think, as I said in the report, where I've asked officers to actually go back and scrutinise why we're, because my immediate concern would be why are we overturning so many decisions? Is there something wrong with our basic decision making in the first place? And the majority were coming back saying if we stripped out all those, it's just because we've got extra information or supplementary information, then actually, you know, the success rate reduces quite considerably. So it does. So I'm pretty satisfied that, you know, if we had better ways of taking the application, then there wouldn't be so many, you know, appeals. The first decision should be right.
How do we actually tackle that particular problem? Because obviously in a lot of cases, you know, these are applications that are obviously urgent for the individual, and if the problem is that it's additional information before they get an appeal overturned, etc. How do we get that information? Is there anything we can do to get that information at the start? I mean, I know it's, you know, it sounds like it's not just filling the form and not 100% right, because we'd pick that up anyway, but is there anything else we should be doing to try to get that information as early as possible? Is there a particular type of information that generally people are not providing?
The biggest appeal area tends to be around community care grants as opposed to crisis grants. The crisis one is the lower of the two, you know, first-tier appeal the higher one is, and probably community care grant, there is more supplementary information needed in there about the extra support somebody needs, or why somebody's wanting to stay or move to an accommodation. And I think this maybe touches on what I said earlier. I think a lot of it is about working more with support organisations, and our partners like social work, homelessness, and third sector, to see, look, if assisting someone applying or advising them, this is the kind of information, this is what we're looking for, or here's the common pitfall area for applicants. So I think we've got a bit more work to do in that type of awareness and information we need to put out.
Okay, members, can we turn to the recommendations then? Members happy to note 2.1, 2.2, and also 2.3. Okay. Okay, members, thanks very much for your attention. I don't have any further business.